Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending the seminar and the sessions today. I'd like to thank Mark Logic and Julie for the invitation here to be able to spend a few minutes talking to you about what our department is doing around data. Obviously, data is critical to the majority of things that we do, and big data and data analytics are not new terms. We have worked over the last 5 to 10 years on making sure that we are gathering as much data as we possibly can. We've been working to do this through a variety of different mechanisms that I want to kind of talk about first to kind of establish the foundation of where we've been, and then also focus on where we're going from here. Because you need to be able to make sure that you're not only gathering data, being able to utilize it more effectively, especially in our world, because we want to make sure that we're improving the quality of lives of all Americans. To think about what we're doing, agencies at the federal level are very well postured to make sure that we are gathering as much data as possible. We fill thousands and thousands of servers each year and moving to the cloud to be able to take our data and build it as quickly as we possibly can. One of the current challenges we have is while we're gathering data very quickly, we're not able to move it around very effectively, which is why we need to have some more nimble capabilities around technology. We also know that we have fixed resources and fixed finances, and so where we struggle is we're able to gather data, but we're not actually able to effectively put data together for meaningful use or even the realm of possibility of things that we have. We think that's where public and private partnerships are really important to be able to take the capabilities that we're strong at and be able to map them and mirror them with what the capabilities that private sector can do. As part of that, we want to make sure that we're also being transparent in all of the information we have. The Department of Health and Human Services is a very large research organization, especially in the areas of the National Institutes of Health, our CDC, Centers for Disease Control, and the Food and Drug Administration. And as we're doing all of these types of studies and research, we want to make sure that we're not keeping the data internal to HHS, that we're sharing it with other private organizations, that we're sharing it with academia, that we're sharing it with state and locals as well. And we have to do that in a more efficient and effective manner, which means that we need to have a true data map and some architecture that allows us to bring all of our data into lakes and pools and be able to have data warehouses that we can share data without having to first assimilate the data so that it's the same type in order to bring it cohesively together. The first thing we try to do in that initiative or arena is something called the Health Data Initiative. We actually were leaning forward about 10 years ago almost at this point in 2010. We actually launched the Health Data Initiative through a partnership through the Institute of Medicine, our agency, and some other academia and state public health areas in the states. That particular group got together. What they did is they formed the Community of Health Data Initiative, which allowed them to really focus first on public health data, because obviously there were things like the avian flu and flu epidemics, so they wanted to be able to understand where these pockets of disease were populating and popping up, and how could we forward lean to be able to make sure that we're providing those resources in those areas as efficiently and effectively as possible, and as quickly to combat those areas. From there, they actually formed what's called the Community Health Data Initiative and worked with the Institute of Medicine and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to make sure that they build a consortium around how they would share and continue to build on that data. And that kind of was where the concept of the healthdata.gov arose. So we have thousands of data sets are now online through the healthdata.gov initiative, but they're data sets. They're just individual sets of information that are posted out on our public website that people can pull down, and they're sorted by categories. And educational institutes and research organizations are using them, but they're using them in pockets. There isn't a formal initiative or an agenda of what to do with the data. It's just there, and you can figure out what you want to do and be as creative as possible. As we looked at this, we're trying to figure out how to foster better engagements with our citizens and not just research organizations, because one of the things we've determined is that if you can harness your own health data, then you can actually add value across the nation, not just to research organizations and not just to private industry, but to individual citizens. As each of us is starting to have more technology that we're using to manage our health, whether that is walking, or how many steps we have, or our heart rate, or our blood pressure, other things that we're doing to try to make sure that we're being healthier, looking at what our calories are and what kinds of nutrients we need to have in our diets. We need to make sure that we are that catalyst for the ecosystem to make sure that we are innovating not only within HHS but across the United States, so we can leverage the types of data we have and those data resources to be more efficient and effective at an individual basis versus a consortium. To do that, we need to make sure that we're establishing initiatives that allow a web of innovation to happen, and not just to be able to say, here's data, but have a strategy of what that innovation is and some of the things that citizens are looking to accomplish. With that, right now, there are over 2,000 data sets that we have. We're trying to release a number of other thousands of data sets that we currently have within the department. One of our biggest challenges is, as I mentioned, is we have a ton of data, but we're not quite sure how to integrate it or what to do with it or what it could actually lead us to. One of the areas that we're initiating now to try to help us with this problem is the Precision Health Initiative. So in the precision medicine and precision health, obviously the goal is to allow individual citizens to ask them to give us their health data, whether that's their electronic health records from their primary provider, whether that is information that they want to feed from their personal devices, whatever kind of information they have, and to put this into a public site that individuals, researchers, educational organizations can come in and tap into that information, obviously taking out the private information, so we protect our personal health information and our personal identification information, but taking that other data and what can you learn from it? But the value back to the citizen is that we want to take that information and populate it back so they can then go in and look at information that these researchers have found about their particular, whether it's their DNA or their particular markers that they might have from blood tests and things that might either predispose them for heart disease or particular cancers, or things that they could proactively look at, or diabetes that they can look at, that they can say, okay, well, what kind of things can I do to help myself so that I don't go down a particular road with my health. Right now within the Precision Health Initiative and our precision medicine, the department has two organizations that are primarily driving this. It's the National Institutes of Health, and it is our Food and Drug Organization, Food and Drug Administration, and the Coordinator for Health. What they're looking for is 1 million volunteers, 1 million people to say, yep, I'm okay with you having my information because I want to know more about me. And they're having people signing up every day. That tells us that this is something that the American public wants to know. They want to be more in control of their health and what they can do to support it. That is only the first step of where we are. The next step is to take that and figure out what we should do from this point forward. Within our organization, we are being championed or challenged by the new administration to reimagine how government works. Instead of being very bureaucratic, how can we be more forward-leaning into what is not best for us as a federal agency, or what are the things we can't do because of current regulation or current policy, and what can we do that puts ourselves, if I were a patient, or I were a citizen and I needed a new drug, or if I were an individual that is on the outside wanting to be able to get into a clinical trial, or I am someone that is concerned about the effects of Zika. What is that information? Right now, if I'm an individual citizen, you can go out and Google a lot of these different terms, but that's very generic. How do we take that very generic information that's out there, whether it's through public domain or if it's information we have or information that's at the state level, and be able to customize that data so that it's personalized for every individual citizen? So one of the areas we are trying to do is to change our perspective. Right now at the department, we usually look at, if you think of a box, we are the inside of the box. We have all the data, and we might give you some on the outer edges, but we are the core, and we know what we need, and we're gathering the data for what we need it for and how we want to use it. However, we'll make it public, and if you'd like to find some other use for it, that's fine. What we're trying to do is get on the outside of the box and look in. Be a citizen. Be an individual researcher. Be someone that's a doctor trying to care for a particular individual or family. What is the information that person needs, and how would they want to use it? How do we make things more user-friendly? How do we take and make all of our capabilities from I have to search and try to piece things together and hope that I can take it to my family doctor and help have them piece it together for me, to it becomes very intuitive for each citizen that is customized based on individual things that they know and is proactively helping them throughout the journey of their life. We think about our department, in many cases, in some way, shape, or form, we touch citizens from birth to grave. That's a pretty long time. How do we make sure at really critical milestones throughout that journey, we are preparing each citizen for those journeys and some of the health challenges that might happen, from birth to starting daycare, to starting school, to going to particular sports they might be involved in, to graduating from high school, to going to college, preparing for their first job, getting married, their children, their children's children, middle age, retirement, and ultimately the twilight of their lives. How can we do that to make sure that we are helping versus, okay, there's some data, you do what you want with it? Because we need to make it more personalized, because each of us has our own thing that we're looking at. And I guarantee if I ask people around this room, there's some health challenge that you can talk about, whether it's you personally or someone in your family, that right now you're trying to figure out how to navigate those particular things. And if that's the case, and we know every single person has a similar story, why don't we change how we work with you so that becomes an answer and a navigator for each of those? In addition to that, we need to make sure that we're partnering with industry. We need to make sure that we've got lots of data. We know that this is what we need to do. The question for us is the how. We know the problem. We know we have the data to solve it. Or if we don't, we know that states and practitioners do. But how do you do that? So we need to work better with industry to say, how can we build data lakes? How can we take business analytics and data analytics to put similar things together based on individuals and trends? How can we use artificial intelligence to start finding trends or finding linkages where we didn't even know they were possible? We didn't ever think that we would crack the genome, but we did. So we know that these things are possible. It's just how to do them. And how do we do it in a mechanism that is user intuitive for citizens? I guarantee and I probably see some lighting up, everyone has a smartphone. How do we put the technology at the fingertips of our citizens? We don't want to have it where, gosh, you can only go to your doctor and you can only go at your doctor's office with 7 passwords to try to get the information you need as a citizen. It has to be something that is easy and something that they're going to want to use. For example, if it's a flu epidemic, do I have to go to the CDC to learn about the flu at the flu.gov site? And then go to my state and see if they actually have a flu epidemic? Then do I need to go to my doctor and find out, okay, what do we have the right flu shot for the type of flu that is spreading? Do I need to make sure, what are the things I need to do to be protective of my children as they're going to daycare and to school? What can I do to make sure that my elderly mother who's in a nursing home, is it widespread there? What are those things I need? Because these are the things as a citizen you're going to worry about on a day-to-day basis. You need to be able to take all that information and assimilate it without having to spend 3 hours searching for information through the web or having a long consultation. How can we engage telehealth? We wanted to make sure that, the Americans are becoming more and busier and busier. So a lot of things such as your wellness checks and preventative care tend to fall by the wayside. But if you could do telehealth on your phone as you're commuting, or if you have a few minutes, bless you, in your day, that you would be able to take and actually have a consultation with your primary health provider to say, these are the kind of things that are happening. Here's some changes I've had in my diet. Here's some things I've had in changing in my exercise or my routine. Are those some things that are going to be beneficial or more risky in the way I approach my lifestyle? And these are the things I want to accomplish. So with that, I challenge each of you on how we, as a community in the healthcare sector, can take and launch the data that we have and all the health data that's available. At HHS, we have 1 in 3 Americans PII right now. That's a pretty significant thing. So as we do this, the one thing we also have to balance that out with is how to protect that data, keeping the privacy of our citizens, and making sure that we are protecting it from cybersecurity hacks. In our organization, we have over 500 million cyber hack attempts each week. That's going to go up because health data is the one thing about you that you can't change. And it's very powerful information, and the value of that data is going up. So we need to be able to make sure that we're providing services that meet the needs of our citizens, but we also have a responsibility to protecting their information so that it isn't used for foul purposes or it's not used in malicious ways. One thing, for example, that we didn't even think about, what one hospital actually had, for example, its x-rays stolen. X-rays. Well, why would you? And they were only clean x-rays. Why would you care? What we found out is in order to immigrate into the United States, you had to have a clean x-ray. So they were taking clean x-rays and selling them on the black market to people that wanted to come into this country so they could show that they had a clean x-ray. It's mind-boggling what you can do, and why people would want to have health information, from blood tests to drug screenings, and even private information around mental health that people might want to use. We have a responsibility to make sure that we're protecting our citizens' information as they make it public and as they want to use that information to improve their health. So as each of you goes through the day today, think about this as a dichotomy. How are each of you in your jobs and in the roles that you play working to take the information and data that is provided to you in whatever sector you might be in, whether that's health or transportation, energy, finance, wherever it might be. How is that information being used not only for your specific business or your organization, but how is that helping the larger community within HHS and or the world? Because as we know, data is power, and data is what can be able to take, and it's getting smaller and smaller and more of it. But how do we make sure that that information that we're providing gives value back to the constituents by which we serve? And with that, I hope each of you has a great day, and thank you for your time.